Democrats have officially begun the second impeachment of Donald Trump, introducing the articles of impeachment starting today. So first up, I'll get to what they are doing right now and also the good and bad, potentially, from impeachment, though I tend to think this is a great idea, but I'll get to that in a second. First up here, New York Times reporting, breaking news, House Democrats have formally introduced an article of impeachment charging President Trump with inciting violence against the government of the United States. Now, it's undeniable that he was directly involved in this entire process. So as they report here, the 4-page impeachment article charges Mr. Trump with inciting violence against the government of the United States when he sowed bogus claims about election fraud and encouraged his supporters at a rally outside the White House to take extraordinary measures to stop the counting of electoral votes underway at the Capitol. A short time later, rioters mobbed the building, ransacking the seat of American government and killing a Capitol police officer. 4 others also died as a result of injuries or medical emergencies on Capitol grounds. Last-minute changes were made late Sunday to include a reference to the 14th Amendment, the post-Civil War era addition to the Constitution that prohibits anyone who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. from holding future office. Lawmakers also decided to cite specific language from Mr. Trump's speech last Wednesday, inciting the crowd, quoting him saying, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." So clearly, Donald Trump, of course, if it wasn't already obvious, yes, directly involved in this entire mob on the Capitol last week. Impeachment really is the bare minimum at this point. Now, before they're even getting to this, or I should say, before they even got to these articles of impeachment, there's a push here for to push a resolution on Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, which would remove him from office if Pence actually put that forward along with his cabinet. Of course, Pence is not going to. It did not pass unanimous consent. It's going to go to a formal vote on Tuesday, and then at that point we'll see how far that goes. But I think impeachment appears to be the one reaction here, or the one formal act here that will actually be pushed through and has the support, of course, of Democrats controlling the House. Now, when we get to the Senate, no, obviously. Actually, I shouldn't say obviously, but it's unlikely that he will be convicted in the Senate, at least for now. There is that potential that it may hold off until later on, and then they'll push to, like, once Trump's actually out of office, and then push to convict. I don't quite understand all the implications there once he's out of office, what it really means to convict him at that point, but the hope is that he would actually face some sort of criminal charges for the acts that he engaged in here. So, that's still a ways off. There is a debate whether or not the Senate should take this up over the next week, or if they should wait until Joe Biden has been sworn in and has his cabinet and then move forward on conviction. But we'll wait and see to all that. Let me just go over some of the good and bad here. So when it comes to impeachment, the good, I think it's obvious. If he's convicted, he can't run for office again. So that would be a major positive here if he is actually convicted. It puts GOP lawmakers in a tough spot to decide, are they going to acknowledge reality, or are they going to try to continue to benefit from being Trump adjacent? So in that sense, I mean, that can be a good or bad, as I'll get to. And also, it sets a precedent that you can't mount an insurrection without consequences. So, again, this, even though, I don't know. I was going to say, let's be fair, but I would hope that in the future, anybody that would try to do this again would be held accountable. But, of course, you can't take anything for granted here. So, at the very least, at the bare minimum, this just sets a standard for what is and isn't acceptable as president. Now, the bad here, I really only have one point, though there may be more, but as I said under my good category, the potential bad for GOP lawmakers is that it could give them potential cover to, in the last week of Trump's presidency, now say, well, now I agree with you and Trump should be impeached and convicted. And it gives them cover for later on to allow them to become more or allow them to lose the criticisms that the media would normally have of those Trump supporting GOP members of Congress. It can now allow them to shed that and become, this Republican that actually stood up to Trump, when in reality they didn't stand up to him over the last 4 years. So there is that downside there in terms of the political impact of it, but I don't care. I really don't care. He needs to be impeached, regardless of the political implications. He needs to be impeached again. What he did was wrong. Clearly, he needs to be impeached. And again, that is the bare minimum. Now, a little more here. I just want to go over some of what happened. As I was gone last week, in case you didn't know, I did a live stream yesterday discussing why I was gone. But just to go over some of the stuff that I missed quickly and why this was such a big deal. Report here, Capitol mob wanted to execute VP Mike Pence and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. There were actually chants in the crowd of people going after or chanting to go after Mike Pence. The idea here was they were going to hang him and basically hang him for being a traitor to Donald Trump, as he was going to certify the Electoral College to allow Joe Biden to become president, which, again, is just a ceremonial move, but still, they were going to do this. Also, from New York Post here, Air Force vet identified as rider with zip ties during Capitol siege. You may have seen images of this dude here, zip ties. These guys were serious. Like, at the time, it seemed sort of like a big joke, in the sense that these people that are clearly crazy. I mean, these are people that are not in the right mind. But because of that, because they're not in the right mind, they also were as far as, carrying weapons, carrying zip ties. They had a plan to actually go after lawmakers and, as I just showed you, either kill them or hold them as hostages. So this was, this was not a joke. This shit was serious, and it could have got a lot worse than it actually was. So, again, Trump incited all of this. Brian Sicknick, Capitol police officer killed in coup attempt. So there was an officer actually killed during the coup. He was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, later died in hospital. He apparently was a Trump supporter, though he was anti-Bush. So he was one of these guys that was anti-establishment, right-wing Trump supporter. And the mob that otherwise he would be a part of, not the mob in the mob sense of it, but in terms of their view on Donald Trump, that's the mob that ended up killing him. So it's a really sad story, and 4 other people died as well during this riot. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised it wasn't a lot more based on the amount of weapons that were there. I will link to this below the video. You can go through this. This Andrew Kimmel here lists a number of people who were caught. This guy drove to D.C. packed with a loaded M4 assault rifle, 3 handguns, 11 mason jars filled with homemade napalm, charged with having Molotov cocktails in the bed of his truck, and there's more and more people. Meredith was bragging to friends that he was headed to D.C. with a shit ton of 5.56 armor-piercing ammo. Like, you go down this, all these different people who brought... I haven't read through this all because there's too much. These people all brought weapons, all brought bombs, Molotov cocktails, anything that they could to escalate what had already gone on last week. So they had plans here, at least some of them had plans in the mob, to do a lot more destruction than what was actually caused at the time, even though a lot of destruction did happen. But in terms of the amount of death and injury, could have been much, much worse. And of course, through all of this, Donald Trump was, quote unquote, delighted. His supporters stormed the Capitol, says GOP Senator Ben Sasse. So Ben Sasse had spoken to members around Donald Trump, members of his cabinet, people, his advisors around him, and apparently Trump was surprised that other people in the White House weren't as happy as he was that this was going on. As I've been saying forever, Donald Trump is completely insane. So the bare minimum is impeachment. There has to be a lot more after he is out of office. There has to be charges laid, whether it is from from the Justice Department, whether it's from different states, regardless, there has to be, this can't be the end of it. Impeachment can't be the end of it. This clearly is not enough. You have to actually go after this man, charge him for the crimes that he committed.